Welcome back to another episode of the Shared Voices podcast, brought to you by the 1042 Project. Welcome back. Hopefully you guys had a chance to check out the last couple episodes. We had New York Neil on. What a cool guy. We'll have him on again in the future. And coming up after Jake, you guys are going to be hearing from Jessica Machado, California deputy. Pretty amazing story. And excited to introduce you guys to her. She's probably going to be on the podcast quite a bit, really bringing a female perspective. And she was telling me that her agency in that area, like the few agencies within that area south of Fresno, California, Jake, has had like 5 first responder suicides in like the last year and a half or something. It's been crazy, but she's going to be on next week. But this week we got Jake. I want to welcome Jake Belay. Jake, welcome to the podcast, buddy. How you doing?
I'm well. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Excited to hear your story. I did want to share with I never do a good job of sharing, Jake, the impact we're having, the people we're helping, the things we're doing. So I need to get better at that. So I wanted to just kind of start off with a couple of the victories over the last year.
Sure.
And it's pretty cool what God's done. So last year we were able to share the gospel to over 600 first responders and family members, over 600, and offering hope that doesn't run out. I think that's pretty cool. We've done that in a very short period of time. That doesn't count the ones that we speak to at the academy. Pretty cool to be able to share God's word, give people the healing love of Christ, and let them know about first responders and the trauma they're going through. And we also had our first 3-day retreat, men's retreat this year. That went awesome. We had 3 first responders in the last year that we sent out of state to get some in-depth inpatient training. So they were out there for a while. Sometimes we don't have all the resources right here in Iowa, Jake, as you know. There's not a lot of resources in this area. But we got 3 of them. We were able to get them flown out there and get some help for long periods of time. So blessed to be able to help those 3 to get them out of state. We had 22 last year, 22 that came in crisis mode, meaning thoughts of suicide, struggling real bad, emergency type stuff. Being able to set in the cycle of suck, be that rescue line for them. 22 in deep crisis of thinking about taking their life, Jake. That's pretty crazy. That's just right here in Iowa.
Yeah. Not surprising to me, but yeah.
Yeah. And it's been a blessing. We've invested over 640 hours with our first responders in the last year, directly with them. We had 24 outdoor outings. 24 when we had first responders get together, go fishing together, hunting, stuff like that. 24 outdoor, where first responders get together, break bread, have fun, and get to enjoy life. So 24, that's awesome. We've had over 30 Bible studies in the last year. We've got to sit down with first responders coming into the law enforcement career and do Bible studies with them. So 30 of them. Saw several lives who gave their life to Christ, which is what it's all about. The podcast is reaching 1,500 per week when people listen, and that's climbing rapidly. We had plans to get that to grow longer. And we also added 6 new ambassadors to the organization. So a lot of growth. Pretty amazing what God's doing, especially since it's mainly just a couple of us that are doing it. And that's why we started the ambassador program, Jake. Our ambassador program is where we repurpose our first responders, maybe some people who have been there, people like you. We get them trained up, and we have a little program we put them through where they can be equipped to go out and be ambassadors, the light in their area within their department, where they can be the voice of 1042 and be a bridge to getting people help and treatment and letting them know that there's no guilt or shame We're growing that out, Jake. So we have people all over the state, eventually all over the U.S., but right now all over the state, where there's 1042 people in every area that can respond and be to our first responders and their families when they need them in a very short period of time. So if you're a first responder listening, or a family member, or somebody who feels called, reach out and let us know if you want to be part of the ambassador program. Go to our website. At the front of the website, at the very bottom of the page, you will see a get involved. Click on the get involved, go down to ambassador, click on that, and send your information and let me know that you want to be an ambassador for the organization. Not a lot goes into it, but I will share with you what it all entails. And if you decide you want to do it, we'll do it. We're looking for more people. The more we can get, the better. So send me an email, call. But we need some ambassadors. We need your first responders that feel called to help others, to step up and help the younger generation or other ones, our peers. Now's your time. God's been putting it on your heart. Now's your opportunity. We want to help give you that chance. We want to help provide the resources you need to be able to do that well in your area. So reach out. We need you. God's called you for a reason. I know it can be scary, but try to get over that fear, because there's growth right on the other side of that. So yeah, Jake, let's get it right to it, buddy.
Absolutely.
I actually just got to meet you not too long ago. We had a mutual friend that set up a dinner where we got to meet. It was we kind of ended up on the opposite side of the tables. So I really didn't get to talk to you that night. It was a fun night. I had a great conversation.
Shook out,
yeah. But we've had a good chance to talk since then. And once I got to hear your story and I got to hear your heart and hear what you're doing, man, I wanted to have you on the podcast to share your story. You know, the podcast is called Shared Voices. I don't want to just share my voice. I want to share other first responders' stories, and their ups and their downs. Because your story, Jake, it's not all about the peaks. There's a lot of valleys in there too, just like mine.
Oh yeah.
And what's cool about you is you're open, honest, and transparent about it. You don't hide that you went through it. You don't hide your struggles. You now use all that pain for purpose, and you now are a voice and an advocate for first responders in their mental health. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So and now you are a trauma recovery coach. So walk us through this journey. Tell us about little bouncing baby boy Jake and how you ended up to where you are now, buddy. It's a good godly story. Let's hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. I grew up in Northeast Iowa. Decorah is the name of the town. Decorah has become more popular these days. So chances are, if you're from Iowa, or if you've even heard of Iowa, you've heard of Decorah. It's a beautiful area. Didn't realize that till I left. It's not like the rest of the state. It's there's bluffs and a lot of rolling hills, and it's a lot more scenic than a lot of the state. So yeah, I had a pretty decent upbringing there. I grew up in a home environment with a lot of turmoil, but from the outside looking in, it looked good. Materialistically, had everything I needed. You know, it's a good town, good place to grow up. But within the walls of my home, there's definitely some chaos between my parents and they were. I don't really want to spend a lot of time, trash talking them necessarily, because they were doing their best. But
surprise to you, on line 3, we got your parents. No, I'm just kidding.
They did their best, but
I hear you, buddy. It's tough. I had a tough childhood too. It's tough to talk about.
They did their best, but they were workaholics. They were gone a lot, and they basically just devoted a lot of what they had to give to their respective professions, and then didn't have anything left at the end of the day, and it turned into conflict and arguing, and not the greatest. But grew up playing sports. That's kind of where I found my escape. I played soccer, football, wrestling. all the way through. Found an identity there and graduated and decided to go to the University of Iowa. It's an interesting decision because it was between that or a D3 school to play football. And sometimes I wonder what would have been different if I'd gone and played football as opposed to go to Iowa City and party, but that's what I did. I chose Iowa City just because I wanted to go have fun. Ended up picking psychology as a major because it interested me. And I don't know, just didn't have a plan, just picked it. Graduated.
So no law enforcement vision at this point. Like you're no idea of even thinking about being police.
Oh no, I mean anybody up and until really a few years before I got hired. I think I would have told you you're crazy to think I was going to be a cop. And if you'd known me growing up, you'd have thought the same thing. I did play sports, but I also was constantly getting, detention and suspended from school and run-ins with the cops in my hometown and getting in trouble with my parents. I was always out trying to get away with something. And
you and I would have been good friends. We sounds like we're a lot alike.
Living on the edge, out taking my parents' cars out and racing people and drinking in cornfields. And yeah, I just was I've always had a lot of energy. I've always had a drive, and it's just a question of whether I'm putting it towards something good or not so good. But no plan to be a cop as a kid. I was kind of interested. I was always kind of interested in the police. Most people are, the car chases and, carrying a gun and, the kind of the fast paced stuff was always interesting, but no early plans, but studied psychology, ended up graduating and just got a couple jobs that I could find. I worked in the social work field is what I would call it. I initially was working with adults with disabilities, doing community-based cares and direct support is what it's called, entry-level position. Ended up going from there and getting involved in youth corrections or youth. I worked at a youth emergency shelter through an organization called Four Oaks in Iowa City. And that's where I kind of was first exposed to law enforcement because those shelters are emotionally charged and full of young troubled adults. And so inevitably crimes are committed and the police need to be called. And I started to interact with the police there a little bit. And I had one experience in particular where this officer I just couldn't believe how much time he gave to these little girls. They were two like 13-year-old girls that got into a straight up fist fight and were pulling each other's hair and clawing and scratching each other. And we called and I assumed the cops would show up and just haul one of them off or both of them off. But this officer, I ended up working with him later, but he just took all the time and he took like over an hour and talked to these two. And they were both initially wanting charges pressed and they wanted to sue each other. And, they just had such animosity. And by the time he was done talking with them, they were friends and they remained friends and no one was charged. I don't even think he could have just been a master at getting out of writing a report too, for all I know, but I don't even think he wrote a report.
I got good at that.
But it was impressive to me. And it just kind of, it turned me on to a different side of law enforcement that I didn't realize existed. Still didn't decide it's what I wanted to do. I just was impressed by that moment and worked there for a while. Ended up being drawn toward juvenile, more of the correction side of juvenile delinquency, and got a job at the Lynn County Juvenile Detention Center up in Cedar Rapids as a tracker, a juvenile court tracker. And so I worked closely with the juvenile court officers to provide community-based supervision to typically the higher risk kids. And in Cedar Rapids, some of these kids are, legitimate gang members, and some of their crimes are gun related, violence, a lot of violence. And so I was going and doing home visits with these kids, at their house in the roughest parts of Cedar Rapids. And Cedar Rapids is a fairly rough town. And I enjoyed it, but my ability to really do anything to help was very limited. And that became frustrating because I would go and I would see, one kid in particular pops up in my mind because I would go to his house and his mom, his dad, who knows where his dad was, and his mom, it depended on the day if you could even find her. And they lived in this big old house, big old craftsman style house that had just fallen into complete disrepair. And a lot of times I'd have to walk into the house and walk around the house just to even find him. And he would have been up, all night running around and doing drugs. And a lot of times he'd still be sleeping on just a mattress in the corner of some room at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very common, that type of situation, that type of experience. And I always wanted to, I'd contact the juvenile court and say, this living environment is terrible. His mom's neglecting him. And, they just, nothing would be done. And so I started to really have a desire to want to do more. And I also interacted with the police a lot in that career too. So I had more and more exposure to law enforcement and more of a desire to have the ability to affect change. And I realized that as a police officer, I could do that. So I became real drawn to it real fast. I applied for and interviewed with Cedar Rapids Police Department first. I tested with them and knocked all the testing out of the park. Like this is back. Keep in mind, this is back when a department like that would have 500 applications at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not like it is now where 3 people show up.
Yeah, and so I was up against. On testing day, there were several hundred people that showed up just to test.
Yeah,
and so the competition was pretty stiff. And I had really good experience and really good knowledge of the town based on my job, but the first like pre-interview process, they went through the list of, have you ever done this? And have you ever done that? And you ever done this? And it came up to, what type of drugs have you done? And I had done a few in my younger days. And my approach going in was, I'm just going to be honest about it. Because that's one aspect about me. I have like almost a compulsive need to be honest. Sometimes to a fault, I would say.
mm-hmm.
But that was my take. I said, if I can't be honest and get hired, then I don't deserve to do this job. And so I was honest, and they kicked me out of the process immediately. So, up against 500 other applications, nothing incredibly unique about me. Looking back, I see why I got the boot. At the time, it's you've done drugs, you're out. And it hadn't even been very recently. It'd been like when I was back in the day. But that was discouraging, but I really wanted to do it. And so I decided maybe I could make a connection through the juvenile court that would get me a foot in the door with some department in the area, and I could overcome my indiscretions of my youth. And that's exactly what I did. There was Iowa City PD at the time had a detective assigned to juvenile cases specifically. And I had gotten to know him. His name was Kevin Belay. And one day I was at the juvenile court office, and he came in and he said, "We're hiring and we're looking for people with juvenile experience." And I thought, I got juvenile experience. I want to get hired. And so I started talking with him. I went and did a couple ride-alongs with guys on patrol. I came and talked to him at his office. I saw the PD. I was introduced to the chief. I did exactly what I was hoping would happen. I got a foot in the door. And so I applied, and I feel like I just was about to say something. I forgot what it was, but I applied, and same hurdles came up. I should mention, I had been arrested for OWI too when I was 18. And so the same hurdles and roadblocks came up, but because I'd established that personal connection, I was able to overcome it. And Kevin actually ended up doing my background check, and he really, really wanted me to get hired because he saw the potential in me and liked my juvenile experience a lot. So he had me write a bunch of extra, like almost essays about some of the, about how did I get arrested and why is it not an issue anymore? And, why did how did you end up doing drugs? How many times did you do it? Just had me explain in writing those things. And that seemed to do the trick. It got me through to the chief, and the chief's interview went well. I got hired. one thing. Oh, that's what I was going to say. On one of the ride-alongs, I rode at night, late at night, and I went into the roll call meeting, and I saw these guys sitting in the corner. They weren't dressed in the uniform like everybody else. They had beards, and they just kind of looked important. And I said to the officer I was riding with, I said, what's going on over there? What are those guys doing? They were the street crimes unit. The street crimes action team is what it was called. And I found out what they did. They worked proactive cases. They wrote search warrants. They kicked doors in the middle of the night. They were after the worst of the worst. And
Adrenaline, baby, adrenaline.
I just locked on, and I said, I'm doing that. I don't care how long it takes. I'm doing that. And so I got hired, and I was just all in. Went to the academy. I wouldn't say I love the academy, but I got a lot out of it. Went through field training. It all just felt like second nature. It felt like a calling. I just took to it like a duck to water and put a lot of effort and energy into it. And my career just took off. So I was hired in 2015, and by 2018, I was named Officer of the Year for the department. I was able to become a field training officer. I was a DRE and drug recognition expert.
Yep.
I actually went to DRE school and graduated first in my class, got an award for academics in the class, which I don't think any law enforcement training is particularly tough, but DRE school is hard for a law enforcement training.
I think it's one of the, I think most law enforcement training is kind of spoon fed. It's not really that difficult, but yeah, I was a DRE school. That's a lot of training.
Oh, you went to?
Yeah, I did DRE. Yeah. I was
okay.
through.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was a DRE.
I had the briefcase.
Yeah. Yeah. The stethoscope and everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I was a DRE, and I joined the TAC team. We called it SRT, the Special Response Team. Did that all by 2018 and won Officer of the Year. And so I knew I was in a prime position to apply for that unit, the street crimes unit that I wanted to be on. And sure enough, spent most of 2019 training on the street, being an FTO. And by the end of 2019, there was an opening. I applied for it, interviewed, and I got picked for the street crimes unit.
Nice. Dream come true in your eyes.
Yeah. And I was up against some stiff competition. I had a couple other guys that interviewed for it, had 2-3 times the number of years on, and one of them had been a supervisor at a different department. I put a lot into it, and it panned out, and I got selected for it at the end of 2019. And so beginning of 2020, I start working that job. And I mean, it was literally like, if you've seen the movie Training Day, the first day I hopped in the car with the guy that'd been on the unit for 3 or 4 years. And it was, I mean, it's Iowa City. It's not a big city, but it felt like a movie. He drove me around, and he gave me a hard time, and he talked a lot of trash. And he even quoted Training Day several times.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Was he being real, or was he just testing you, dude?
He's messing with me.
Okay.
Just
okay.
Totally, which is exactly what Denzel does in Training Day.
Yes. Okay. So you caught on to it, though.
I did, but it's still like that's a pretty unwinnable situation when you're going into, because it's a totally different type of policing. So all of your training
out the window.
You know this,
Yeah.
like you don't wear a vest with all of your tools on it, or a belt with all your tools on it, and you have to learn a whole new set of norms and tactics, and how to act, how to carry yourself, what to look for. It's like a different job.
Completely.
But I loved it. And then, so that's at early 2020. And then the world came to an end. Actually we had our first kid March 4th of 2020. And then about 5 days later, COVID hit. And then a couple months after that, the George Floyd incident happened, and the riots kicked off. And I'm telling you, 2020 changed everything for me. I had
good or bad.
It was a crazy year. It was just crazy. Yeah. We had a massive uptick in gun violence in Iowa City. And so my unit went from being primarily proactive to being assigned all of these shootings. I mean, at one point I had 19 shooting cases on my caseload.
Golly.
And most of them were people that don't cooperate with the police. Victims, suspects, witnesses, nobody cooperates with the police. And so they were the kind of cases where we knew who did it, but we couldn't get a charge together because we didn't have anybody to cooperate with it.
Right.
And so we ended up getting together with the U.S. Attorney's Office and coming up with a plan to build a case against these guys, because we had traced a lot of the guns to the same source, which was some gang members from Chicago had moved to Iowa City, and they had found this lower functioning guy in town who they were manipulating into doing straw purchases. They were getting him to walk into. They were giving him money, he was walking into Shields, buying a gun, coming out and handed it off to them, and we ended up figuring out he bought like 30 or 40 guns in a couple months. And a lot of them were directly tied to the shooting incidents. So put together this operation, call it Operation Scarecrow, straw purchases, Scarecrow. That's creative, I think. Ended up with six indictments and 6 convictions on this conspiracy to traffic weapons case, which is pretty cool. There's a lot of us that went into it. I can't take credit for it. I had a role in it. I was not the mastermind of it, but it was pretty cool. But anyway, through the course of 2020, Iowa City had over 30 days straight of riots after the George Floyd thing. The city council members were actually out leading some of the protests and riots and advocating for defunding the police, abolishing the police department. Writing articles about abolishing the police, and everything just fell apart. So I'm saying everything changed. I went from officer of the year on top of the world to basically to I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah,
I don't.
And the public hating you.
Yeah.
For nothing you did.
I became very, very paranoid in the middle of the riots. Somebody looked me up and contacted my parents, my sister, an aunt, and my wife, and made threats to dox my address and make it a target for the rioters and protesters, and called me a war criminal because we had actually one of the nights of the riots in Iowa City, the night I was describing to you earlier, we deployed tear gas and OC and everything on a crowd that was trying to go and block the freeway in the middle of the night.
Not just a freeway. We were talking I-80.
Yeah. Interstate 80.
Right.
Interstate 80 in the middle of the night. And there was some videos that went viral on Twitter that night in Iowa City. From what I understood at the time, Iowa City riots were like the number 3 trending topic in the world on Twitter briefly.
Wow.
And so I guess what happened, and this is the best that I could piece it together, is this guy saw something on Twitter. And so he looked up the Iowa City Police Department, and probably there was an article written about me when I won Officer of the Year. And I'm guessing that popped up, and that's how he targeted me.
Yep.
I don't really know. I ended up tracking him down to Texas. He was a guy, just some keyboard warrior in Texas, it turned out, wannabe Antifa kind of guy. And I had the local sheriff's office go down there and talk to him. I don't know exactly what they did, but they called back and said I wouldn't be hearing from him again, and I didn't. So I didn't ask any questions.
Taken care of. TCO. Taken care of.
Handled. Yeah. So anyway, everything changed. We decided we wanted to leave Iowa City. We didn't want to raise a family there. I didn't want to be working for a department, working for a city whose city council and city manager are trying to defund and abolish. And there was an environment ripe for, being an officer who's made an example of in the name of the movement. So I could just picture being forced to make a split-second decision and then just being hung out to dry by the city.
Yep.
And incarcerated, probably arrested, charged, probably, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So we decided to move to Des Moines. My wife is originally from Ankeny, and I really at the time didn't want to be a cop anymore. Everything fell apart so fast. And I looking
How
back,
many years you got there?
I was there like 6.5 years.
Okay. So
Um,
that's about the burnout phase.
yeah.
6 years. Yeah.
Well, and looking back, I didn't realize my mental health was terrible at
Really.
that time.
Did
I
everybody else around you know though?
well, I
Sorry.
yeah, yeah, they did. They
Yeah.
did. My last performance review at the Iowa City PD, keep in mind 2018, I'm officer of the year. My last performance review would have been in 2021, right before I left. It was all about how terrible my attitude was. I had a lieutenant and a sergeant talk to me about how I had such a bad attitude and how, I had, I don't remember exactly anything they said, but it was just over and over and over about how my attitude was and how I used to be so driven and motivated. And, if someone gave me a task, I did it right away. And I did it to the best of my ability, to just kind of doing the bare minimum. And, sometimes just calling in sick or just not showing up, or, there was a stark difference. And looking back, I wish someone had pulled me aside and said, "Are you okay?" But
Right.
that just wasn't the culture. It was, get your shit together, figure it out, stop with your bad attitude. That we don't tolerate that here. This is on you to figure it out. But anyway, I wish someone had just stopped to think, officer of the year to this, like,
Right. Well, and the thing is that they've had that same conversation with you with 70% of the department.
yeah,
Like, but yet we're not relating what's happening here.
yeah,
Like we're telling people, well, you're no longer what you used to be. You used to be love coming here. You used to be the extra shift guy. You used to do this. Now you don't. Well, how about we look at the roots of that
yeah, yeah.
instead
And
of just saying your attitude sucks.
I didn't see it either.
Yeah.
I was blaming everyone and everything else other than myself or my own mental health
Yeah.
for the way I felt. And there's some leadership issues that at the department, just like a lot of departments. And that, it was easy for me to say all of my problems are due to poor leadership, or all of my problems are due to what I've experienced with these riots and this invasion of privacy of this guy calling me. And as too, when you work in plain clothes on a street crimes unit, or you did the narc thing, it's a lot more personal when you charge somebody, when you show up at someone's house in plain clothes, and you charge them typically with felonies instead of misdemeanors.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that Jake was the one that did it, not
You
just
went through her underwear drawer. Like
yeah,
you're
not
going
just,
through all their private stuff.
you wear a uniform and a badge, and the majority of people just see a cop, a
Yeah.
uniform and a badge. And so I got arrested by the police, but when you work plain clothes, it's Jake, or I told you they had a nickname for me with the beard, Golden Beard. Golden Beard did this.
That's a
Golden
legit picture too. You showed me, by the way. We're going to have to share that one of these episodes.
Yeah, Golden Beard put this case on me and sent me to prison. And so I just got real paranoid just because of that too, because people knew my name. They just didn't know the uniform. Anyway, decided to move to Des Moines, and I didn't want to be a cop, but I thought I'll give it another shot, because switching careers and moving cities at the same time seems impossible. And we had to buy a house real quick, and the interest rates were so low that competition was sky high. We got in a bidding war over our house and everything. It just, switching careers at that time was going to be one too many things. So I decided I'll at least go somewhere very different than Iowa City. So I picked West Des Moines, which looked like the picture perfect place to work. Very, very different city, very pro police, government, and just the citizens of West Des Moines very pro police, as opposed to Iowa City, where there's a healthy mix, we'll call it. It's an eclectic place, a melting pot. And so I got hired, and there was kind of a honeymoon period there where I was reinvigorated. I was glad to be in a place that supported the police, and I came from Iowa City where by the time I left, we couldn't chase cars. And then even just being able to chase cars in West Des Moines lit my fire again, because it's like we're being the police. But that wore off pretty quickly because those problems I had in Iowa City, I just could distract myself for a while, but they were coming back. My mental health still was not good at all. And the allure of the new department being perfect wore off, and they have just as many problems there, and it's just as stressful inside that building as it was inside the building in Iowa City.
Yep. It's not always greener on the other side. It's just grass.
Yeah. And so then I run into it. I hit this place where I'm like, man, my dream job is not working out. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go to work. I just don't want to do it at all. And I started getting more and more depressed and more bitter, and ended up going on paternity leave in 2023, July 17th, 2023. And I never went back. At the time, I chalked it up to burnout.
Mhm.
Now I know it was PTSD, severe PTSD.
Yes.
Because shortly after I quit, I started having panic attacks, flashbacks, all of the symptoms of PTSD, all of the textbook symptoms. And now keep in mind, I'd been having a lot of those prior, but I just thought it was the cost of doing business. In 2019, we talked about this. I wasn't on scene for an officer involved shooting, but I responded to help an officer who had been shot in the face several times with a CO2 pellet gun. And when I got there, this is a guy I know. This is a friend of mine, and his face was just covered in blood, and he looked at me with the most fear I've ever seen on any person's face. He very obviously thought he was about to die, and I was in the position of having to reassure him, and I didn't know. And the only thing I could think to do at the time was just tell him he was going to be okay. Because I didn't really see an alternative. And so I checked him. I checked him over. I could see puncture holes in his cheeks, and he had, one right here that went in through his forehead even. Those CO2 pistols they're no joke, especially at point blank range. Like he got hit with it, and he returned fire and hit the suspect too. So I showed up.
The suspect unload on his face with the pellet gun. Like, did you guys know it was a pellet gun at that point?
No, that's the thing. I didn't know what he'd been hit.
You just see your buddy there with holes in his face and a look on his face that he's about to die.
Yeah, I knew it was a small caliber, but I thought it was probably going to end up being a 22.
Yeah, which kill.
Yeah,
pellet guns kill.
Yeah, and it was a pellet gun, but those pellets went through and through his cheeks, and they got lodged in the back of his throat. He had one lodged in his sinus. It very easily could have killed him. And the prosecution agreed with that, and they're actually those pistols they meet the definition of a dangerous weapon in the state of Iowa due to the velocity of the projectile. But yeah, that incident, I looked him over. He was breathing. He was tracking me with his eyes. I didn't see any, nothing on his abdomen. It was all in his face, and there was nothing for me to do because throughout my entire law enforcement career, I never got any advanced medical training. It's like, do you need CPR? Do you need a tourniquet or a chest seal? The answer is no. We're waiting for the ambulance, And so I told him, you're going to be fine. I could hear the ambulance siren coming. It's a little different siren than, other emergency vehicles. I could hear it. I said, they're almost here. I got to go check and see if I can save the person you shot. Because, I didn't necessarily care too much about that person at that time, but I didn't want him to have to deal with everything. I didn't want him. I thought this in the moment, which is wild, but I didn't want him to have to deal with everything he was clearly already dealing with. Plus having killed somebody. So I wanted to go and try and save her if I could. Turns out she was only shot in the hand. And so I told you this the other day. I even said out loud, I said, "Oh, you just shot in the hand. Who gives a shit?"
Yeah.
You whatever. But
yeah, you just shot your buddy in the face. That's kind of a common reaction.
Yeah.
But
I checked her over, and it was just in the hand, and two ambulances showed up. One took her, one took him. And I just went back to patrol. No one asked if I was okay or if I wanted to go home or anything. I just went back to patrol. And in fact, we spent the rest of that night so short staffed that I handled pretty much every call I went on myself, domestics by myself. Everything I did that night, I went by myself, and it was a call to call. Iowa City's got a high call volume.
Mm-hmm.
Not uncommon for one officer to handle 15, 20 calls for service in an 8-hour shift there.
Yep.
And that's because they're understaffed, because the city doesn't like the department. But I tell that story just to say, like, I started having night terrors very regularly after that incident. I started having flashbacks. I started having some panic symptoms, but I chalked it all up to the cost of doing business. It's just part of the job. It's almost a badge of honor to say that I was having those symptoms. I joked about my night terrors all the time. And if I ever found another officer who could relate, we just bonded. We just bonded immediately. Oh, you're dealing with the night terrors, and we just laugh about it. We didn't do anything to help
Right.
the situation. We just laughed about it.
Yep. Well, you're messed up too. Okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah. And so looking back, that incident was 6 years ago today, July 31st, 2019. And that's when I had trauma before that, different experiences on the job before that too. But that's when a manageable amount of trauma turned into PTSD. Looking back, I just didn't know it.
Yep. You didn't realize what it slowly turned you into.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have those big calls. We have these calls in our career. They're like hammer calls. They kind of hurt a little bit, but it's just like a hammer hit. But then we have these sledgehammer calls that just take you out at the knees. And that's what that call was right there, man. And today's the anniversary.
Yeah.
Yeah. You doing okay?
Yeah. Yeah. This is the best I've done on this day since it happened. And it's because I've been taking care of myself for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first year going into it that I've had a therapist, and I've had a coach, and I've got a psychiatrist, and I've built a community around me for support and understanding. And it's been a very much different experience today than it has been the last several years. The last several years, I just tried my best to numb it out, ignore it, pretend I didn't know what day it was, but you can't get away from it.
Yep.
Let's
go ahead and wrap this episode up. Will you stick around for another one?
Sure.
We're at that 42-minute mark. Let's go ahead and stop there, and then we'll pick right back up with the next episode.
Sure.
So yeah, you guys listening? We'll do the next episode. Stick around, hear more about Jake and his trauma coaching, what he's doing, and how he's turning all of his pain into purpose. So Jake, thank you for being here today, and we will
Thanks for having me.
See you guys next week. And that wraps up another episode from the 1042 Project Shared Voices podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And just a reminder, we are a 501c3. If you guys can support us, you can go to our website, or if you know an organization or a company or your church may want to get involved in supporting 1042 Project's mission of equipping, restoring, and repurposing our first responders, please reach out to us at 10-42project.org. There is a giving page on there. We need your help. We need your support. If you can't give financially, please be willing to share the word of our podcast, of our organization, and the work that God's doing. Thank you, and have a blessed week.